Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, we got a very, very, very special guest. Somebody I'm really excited to get on the show, and somebody I was lucky enough to personally meet at the Cosmic Summit with Tyrone. But until we get to that guest, we're going to introduce the other rejects that are on the show. And we got with us Sarah. What is going on, Sarah, from Universe Unveiled? How's it going?
Hey, how's everyone doing? I'm glad to be here again. We actually covered the Gobleki Tepe statue yesterday on our news segment, so I'm so excited to hear about it from someone who knows more about it than I do. So I'm Sarah. I'm Director of Public Relations for Institute for Natural Philosophy and co-host of Universe Unveiled podcast, and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah, so am I. Very much looking forward to this. And thank you very much for joining us. And we got Tyrone. Of course. We got Tyrone. What is going on, sir? How are you?
What's up, everybody? What's up, Dean Duncan? It's glad to see you again, man. I know you be on the move and you're a busy man, so appreciate you for being here with us today. And thanks, Nick, for letting me be here with you guys also. And fellow rejects, what's going on? Ethan, I love your books, man. So he's going to talk about that when he comes up here to promote himself. But everything you can find on me is on my website, rebirthoftheword.com. And my book, Journey Through the Origins of History, is on Amazon. You can get that best-selling copy on there. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Thank you for making it, man. I appreciate it. And we got my boy Ethan Indigo. How goes it, sir?
Thank you, Nick, for putting this together. Everyone, always honored to be with you guys and learn from you. Author of a few books, and really looking forward to hear what you have to say about Gobleki Tepe. Groundbreaking topic, right? So appreciate you. Appreciate everybody.
Of course, and I appreciate you making it, sir. And we got my man, the storyteller himself, Robbie Marks. What is going on, sir?
Hello, everyone. I am Robbie Marks. I'm an artist, illustrator, researcher. Currently writing a book on Nimrod. And if you want to check out my stuff as far as my art or even my podcast, the Meta Mindcast, you can check out my Linktree, which is Linktree RMARX. Thanks, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you very much for making it, sir. Definitely go check out his work. And last but not least, for the people joining us here with Dan, we got Doc Brown. He made it. I was 93% sure he was going to make it in time.
93%, brother. I was texting you as I was pulling in the driveway. I was glad to be a part of this. And guys, look over me. My face is swollen. I just got out of the dentist, but I wanted to not miss hanging out and talking with Dan, so I made it. But Prometheus Lens podcast, anywhere you can consume content. Authored my first book, The Epic of Esau, The Birthright and Seed War. And I'm just tickled to death to be here, guys. I'm excited.
Hell yeah, man. I'm really, really glad you're able to make it. This guy's an OG. He just had teeth pulled out of his mouth and he still jumped on. So, thanks right here. So finally, to the man himself, we got Dan Richards, aka Debunking Dan. Please let everybody know what your deal is and what you're about, sir, if they don't know who you are already.
Oh, well, hello. Thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it. It's great to meet all of you. It's those of you I haven't met before. My name's Dan Richards. I go by Debunking online. I basically started with a lot of fact-checking scientists that would debunk Graham Hancock and guys like that, where a lot of times they just misrepresent science. And I'm pretty big on the scientific method. I mean, pretty big on it to the point where there's no better path to truth. There might be other ways to find truth, but there's no better, more consistent. Any group of humans that uses science learns, period, end of story. And so when I see the scientific method kind of being treated like just like a cudgel to knock ideas out of the platform, just off of it's stupid. It's bullshit. So I ended up starting making videos about that. And now I talk about a lot of different things too, from a pretty skeptical point of view. A lot of the times, I mean, I'll entertain things, but you're going to take me there. We're not going from zero to aliens and you're not going to keep me on board if you're going from zero to aliens. I'll be getting off at the first stop.
No, I think I could say the same thing for myself. Real quick too. Oh, you know what? We have another. I totally forgot we had this guy coming on too, and I never sent him the link. So before we get into it, Bennett, you just want to introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, Bennett from Broadcasting Seeds podcast. That's it, man.
All right, awesome.
I'm glad I'm here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah,
it's good to see everybody.
Yeah. So Dan, one thing I have to say I do like about you. Well, I mean, back in the day, I used to talk a lot more shit online. You seem to have me beat on that. It's quite funny reading some of your posts.
Well, thanks. I take less time on Twitter than I used to, but yeah, I basically I mean, I hate to be so simplistic about it, but when it comes to Twitter in particular, it's like I basically lump you into one of two categories real quick. Either you're trying to have a real conversation or you're just trying to throw shit. If you're trying to throw shit, buddy, I've been doing that since the 80s on the bulletin board services. You're going to find you're woefully equipped for this discussion.
Definitely, yeah, you definitely can throw some shade. It's pretty good. All right, so on to Gobleki Tepe.
That big pile of rocks over in Turkey.
Yeah.
It's almost like oil. We should go take that shit.
There's some oil under there. We need that shit. You guys need some freedom. We're coming.
That's what I was about to say. The Turkish people need some freedom, brother.
That's right. That's right.
You ever see that eagle meme? We heard there's oil on Jupiter. I think you guys need some freedom up there. Yeah.
We're on our way.
Yeah, I got.
So, what got you? I mean, I guess I can understand what got you looking into that, but like, with this whole new statue and everything going on, what do you think about that whole site in general? What's going on?
In general, I mean, it's pretty intriguing. I think Graham Hancock has a pretty decent hypothesis that it was like a place where a transference of knowledge was taking place. I'd take it a step further than Göbekli Tepe, but when Graham first formed his hypothesis, that was really all that there was known of. But there's that whole Tas Teplar, however you pronounce it, Tas Tepelar culture that was all over that part of Anatolia. And different areas have very different things, but it's all innovative. That's the first thing that's of note to me, is that everything you see there is it's not just a little bit, it's a huge fucking step above everything else that you see in the region. They're like, oh, well, we see this built up. You'll see a pile of stones laid out in a circle somewhere that was, meant to and form a little enclosure so that they could build a platform to keep grain off the floor to keep the rats out of it. But you compare that to what you see at Göbekli Tepe or Karahan Tepe or a few of those other sites, and it's not even close. There was a ton of symbolism here. I honestly think Göbekli Tepe, when archaeologists say that they only excavate a small percentage of a site, that is true. But I think Göbekli Tepe is one of the ones that's a good candidate for pushing for total excavation, just because of the huge variation in symbols that we see, and at the time in our human history that it is. Even if you look at it from just a mainstream perspective, there's a very good chance that that's the beginning of written language all over those pillars. But we're never going to discern shit. I mean, you just ask a code breaker to figure out a code with only 10 characters out of 200, and he's going to laugh at you. So we're never going to figure it out if we don't dig more.
Wow. Yeah, you think the first written language came from there?
I think that there's a very good chance that the first written language, at least in modern times, I mean, when all those different there's all those different animals, and they're quite often like have you seen the work of Martin Sweatman on the calendar on Pillar 43? I'm sure some of you here are aware.
On YouTube?
Yeah. Dr. Martin Sweatman. Yeah. And he talks about Pillar 43 on Göbekli Tepe and how it's a calendar. And he goes into some pretty good detail as to showing what the different marks could mean. And there's a lot of that kind of thing where you have not just a snake, but you have this motif of snakes going down together all across the side of a pillar. And then it doesn't happen again on any other pillar for 5 enclosures. And then it happens again on one more pillar. These kinds of things to me, they don't seem random or haphazard, or just like, some kid picking designs in different places. They're most likely had some meaning, and we can either be lazy about it and say, it's probably ritualistic or symbolic or something, or we could try to suss what it meant. And one of those sounds like actual work, and one of those we can talk about on YouTube a whole lot easier. Check out those cool fucking pictures, man. Look at that animal. But we're not getting anywhere with that.
Have you looked into Luvian anagrams? I'm friends with Dr. Judd Burton and Dr. Aaron Judkins. They wrote a book on that called Decoding Göbekli, and he was saying that a lot of those markings look like Luvian anagrams or something like that.
No,
if I'm saying that right.
No, I've that book's on my radar, but I haven't read it yet. But no, that would make a lot of sense. I mean, there's a ton of symbolism that we see. If you look at just the statues at the Moai at Easter Island, and the way the hands on those and the hands on the big T-pillars are, I mean, it's, you have to kind of try to deny that there's some sort of connection there. So I wouldn't be surprised if again, I personally think it was a good chance that it is a transference point of technology, that whole region. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see symbolism there that spread throughout the world, which in a lot of ways we do. That naval holding statue, if you look, you'll see those in Sardinia, in the New World, even all across the world. You'll see those guys with their hands on their tummy. And generally it shows up with the advent of either agriculture and or metallurgy. Big shout out to Graham Langdon for his book. Was it this mystery of the naval holding statues or naval holding idols? It's on Amazon, and it is a book worth reading. I don't usually promote people's stuff without them giving me money, but I'll promote that one.
That's
You owe me money,
interesting.
Graham. Sorry.
That's interesting you say metallurgy, because I promote this and talk about this a lot. Anton Parks has this book called Eden. And in this book, and I promoted it on Twitter X plenty of times, and he says that, okay, I'm very familiar with the Sumerians, the Anunnaki. I'm very familiar. I don't believe them coming from planet Nibiru type bullshit. But it does says in there that Enki gave knowledge to what is known as Eve, right? And the knowledge that was given was metallurgy. That's what the forbidden fruit was representing. Okay. Because it was for good and evil, the tree of good, the tree of knowledge and stuff like that. And it was for metallurgy, for agriculture. And he talks about exactly what cuneiform tablet says it. The cuneiform tablet identifiers, I think like one of them is like CBS 83 or something like that. But I have it on next. I can bring it up. But it's on there. And he compares it to what's written next to the Bible and Enoch. Because, in the book of Enoch, it talks about how, these fallen angels gave knowledge and metal and certain stuff to humans. But then the kicker comes into whether they were fallen angels that came from heaven or whether they came from, somewhere else. And it's interesting because the metallurgy, when you look across all civilizations around the world, metallurgy is a big part, whether it's bronze, copper, tin, it doesn't matter. And symbolically, it means something to them. And just like you said, Gobleki Tepe, there's a type of technology, and I like the way you said technology. So I always try to wonder what is your explanation of what kind of advanced technology they might have had? Because when people say technology, I consider advanced technology being going from throwing rocks at animals to killing them to creating a bow and arrow. And bow and arrow would be an advanced type of technology versus the throwing the rock portion. So what is your idea of a technology and fits the realm of those people who were, at that time?
Well, if you're talking about people that were presumably pretty good with boats, right? I mean, if they rode out the flood, they would have had to have known something about it. So they would have an idea of how to use like ropes and rigging potentially. They would definitely know how to use the stars to navigate. They would be really good at teamwork. These are all things that we see on sailing vessels that are low tech. I mean, this isn't like it's complicated to do any of those, but those skill sets put together would immediately transfer to being able to move some pretty big rocks and align them to stars. And that wouldn't be difficult at all for a culture that was used to having these guys pull ropes together to raise a sail or to do this or to do that. It wouldn't be very difficult at all to have them work together to raise a big rock and align it to the star that you follow when you're at sea. So I think that right there would be a big part of it. I also think that sailing necessitates a degree of a transference of knowledge to another generation. If you look at Polynesians, they've got these little goofy things what they do with sticks, where the kids will weave sticks together to make these little cross-shaped things. And what they are is a representation of waves on how they break off of islands. So that each one of these sticks represents a little thing. It's just a way for them to hand their kid their knowledge. And then over time, you would presumably these things would change a little bit as people would learn new things. So that right off the bat, I think that they would have, they would want to have some sort of way to write, some sort of way to transfer their knowledge to the next generation. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were really good with basic tuber foodstuffs. If you look at, again, Polynesians, when they settle someplace, they don't show up with a damn thing that if they can't sit it, just throw it next to them on the bottom of the boat and ride out the voyage. They don't take it. And almost everything they eat is a tuber as far as what they bring with them to a new land. And so I personally think that we could look to that for some idea of what we could expect to see from Göbekli Tepe. I'm not a big fan of like ancient high technology myself. As a matter of fact, when it comes to metallurgy, like if you look at the copper culture in the United States near the Great Lakes region, they would have some copper that they would get off of the ground that was just like 95% pure, and it was just huge, like the size of an automobile chunk of copper. So eventually they run out and they're mining, and eventually that's not giving them anything. Well, and so then by the time the white people show up over here, they're almost not using them anymore. They're almost not even using copper anymore, right? They're using needles and trinkets. And it doesn't take a lot of imagination to see that culture being considered more godlike than the people that came 1,000 years later. They had weapons. I mean, they had fucking swords, right? Made out of copper. I mean, you compare that to one made out of stick or stone, and it's a far cry. But so you can imagine that happening in other places in the world. You can imagine a place where they were able to mine a bunch of metal and it didn't need smelting. And so some pretty low tech solutions to some of these problems. Like I said earlier, I take baby steps to get where I'm going.
And you see a lot of copper axes in Grecian and more Egyptian kind of, as that kind of traverse through there. But what I was going to say is I ran into some old Persian texts where they talk about the original fall of mankind. And they talk about basically Adam taking, or the character that, is represented by Adam, taking sacred rocks from either 5 or 6 different mountains and then compiling them and basically making the first hinge. So when you get into these hinges and looking at Göbekli Tepe in regard to the different characters, and you see the scorpion and the vulture and all to a great extent, we have to philosophize that this is some sort of an astral calendar, possibly.
Mazzaroth, yeah.
Right. To the dog star, yeah.
Yeah, the Dr. Martin Sweatman's description of Pillar 43 is really good, where it builds off of the scorpion that's on it and uses that as Scorpio, and then it takes the vulture as Sagittarius, which does work. It's stretched out in the same position. It puts the sun as the little ball there, and then from there it's able to discern he's able to discern different ideas. I mean, his hypothesis is met with a lot of opposition, but at the end of the day, it does fit. It does fit where that would be potentially a marker of a certain date. Now, a lot of times I think these guys like Martin Sweatman, he gets kind of caught up in the whole, they're trying to warn the future about it. And I don't think it's so much they're trying to warn the future. I think that people get that backwards. That's a scientist looking at that thing. The motivations for putting a time capsule into the ground are the same type of motivations, I think. And it ain't got nothing to do with, I'm going to send a message to the future. It's, man, they're going to want to know what we were doing back in these days, because we're fucking important, man. It's our generation's going to be the last one, the one the world's going to end. Yeah, yes.
Preservation. Yeah.
Every generation's the best. Yes, exactly. They're going to want to know. It's us.
That's what all these podcasts and people writing their books and shit is going to do. Hey, if you're traveling thousands of light years, you got plenty of time to gather this information.
Pissing on the tree of time.
It's pretty wild when you think about the way that all of this gets put together in different minds, and like some people see things in entirely different ways than other people. And that's one of the reasons that I think it's really important that we don't reject other ideas out of hand, because it really takes one person. I mean, it takes one person and then people building on it. Don't get me wrong, but Einstein comes up with the theory of relativity, and it's so counterintuitive that most people can't even wrap their head around it at first until he hands it to them in a form of a real simple equation. Then that real simple equation ain't going to do a goddamn thing. It had almost nothing to do with what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Einstein has that great quote of, it's like 5 or 6 years later, and he says that the theory of relativity is almost unrecognizable to me now the mathematicians have gotten a hold of it. They start beating it out and it's actually not actually this number exactly. And when they start doing that, that's when you get the real complicated, the abilities to split atoms. So it takes that dreamer, that person, to come up with this avant-garde idea that's so fucking goofy. The germ disease theory with Louis Pasteur as opposed to the four humors. Yet everybody else thinks you just got to raise and lower the amount of blood and bile and shit in somebody, and he's like, no, man, there's just these invisible bugs. I mean, people laughed at it. They mocked him heavily. You're stupid. Invisible bugs. I was like, ghosts doing it too. But now it's really important to me, I think, that these different theories get entertained, even if some of them, to me, like Christopher Dunn's a great example. I think a lot of his theories are really interesting, but I think he's way too into high technology for me. Way too into high technology for me, but I still listen to what he has to say. I like the guy. I mean, I talk to him fairly regularly. He even sent me all of his books to read and stuff, and which I've read about half of the second one and the first one all the way through. I've read about half of the three so far, but yeah, it's so, to me, I think that's one of the biggest things that we see bad in the archaeological community. And as much as they try to tell us that science learns from its mistakes, I mean, we saw this with Clovis first, and we saw this before. Not a lot of people know that, but I'm sure most of you are aware of the Clovis first debacle, where they.
I live right near Savannah. They right out there, man. There's a private land out there that's Clovis land.
Yep. Yeah, there's they say about 12,000 years ago, 12,000 BC, so it'll be like 14,000 years ago, I guess, that they were coming over on the Bering Land Bridge with the first Americans, and that was anybody who presented evidence against that hypothesis. Anything older than around 14,000 years was just categorically rejected as bullshit, and fought tooth and nail, to the point where an archaeologist that was in God damn it, where was he at? He was down in South America somewhere, and he was oh, come on, Monteverde. Where is the site at? I'm drawing a big blank now. But anyway, he's down there during Pinochet and all that crazy shit. Chile. He's down there during Pinochet, and one of his colleagues contacted the local newspaper and said that the whole site of Monteverde was a CIA plant to put him and his family down there. And it's like threatening his family with the fucking dictator over science. And this was all put to bed. Monteverde, that site proved it wrong. That scientist, Tom Dillahay, he was proven right. He was the guy that fought tooth and nail and got it won. But just about 50 years before all that shit was going down, there was the whole Folsom first was the hypothesis. If you push the people into the Americas back around more than 5,000 years outside of the Folsom culture, you were full of shit, you were crazy, and you could expect to be rejected by archaeology. So they just don't learn. They haven't fucking figured out yet that what they're doing is anti-scientific. It's one thing to be skeptical. It's another thing to be cynical. That I don't know a better way of putting it than that.
That's crazy that you said about the 14,000 years ago thing, because we here in Georgia, Sarah knows about it. We have this place called Gobleki Mounds, and when you walk into a Gobleki Mound Museum, they literally have pictures that says different dates of time periods, and one of the pictures says 17,000 years ago. So, and this is but they consider them people the Mississippian period, but the Mississippi period came much later than that. It's just that the culture or the group of people was inhabiting that land since 17,000 years ago. Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry, go ahead.
So it's just interesting that everybody has these dates. You get one date for one thing over here, another date, and you can tell when they're using these dates because they're trying to fit that date to match their narrative. That's what they're trying to do. They're not taking. They don't want their narrative to be taken. This is one thing that I hate. I hate when people say a theory and then they can't change their theory to make it better. That's why some of these damn cars is running the way they running nowadays anyway. You know what I'm saying? People don't know how to sit here and say, okay, look, all right, we know this doesn't work. It's a theory that it was supposed to work, but it's not going to work this way. So we have to change it up. And, radiocarbon, they have, they always have this threshold of, it could be 100 years or 1,000 years, So what evidence that are you using to make you pick that specific date instead of any other date? And that's the questions that I like that it's you
universal
ask.
Narrative.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the kind of questions that Dan be asking, and Graham is asking also personally, and that's what I be wondering too. And I'd be like, okay, you say 200 years, so why is it 200 years ago versus 700 years ago? Why is the radiocarbon, why are you picking the 200 rather than the 700? What more evidence that you got that is 200 versus the 700? And those are the questions, answers that we don't ever get.
No, well, a lot of times it comes down to a difference in motivations. Like you're talking about a museum that is presumably heavily influenced, if not outright owned by the tribes. And depending on the part of the country you're in, it can really blow somebody's mind, because like the tribes over here, for example, they're strong. And I don't mean strong. They have casinos that are tax-free, and they've had them for over 20 years. They're fucking rich. They're filthy fucking rich. And if they challenge you on they'll challenge a site and say, we found an arrowhead. Well, we think that's a grave good. Well, technically it's not a grave good, but they'll tie your ass up in court longer than any archaeologist any institution is going to be able to run with it. And so there's a lot of claims to be made based on age. Like Kennewick man was about 10,000 years old, and he was claimed by the locals, the Colville tribe, even though he's arguably not a call. And so this is where you're going to get those older dates. If the native tribes are involved, they're going to be like, yeah, well, history book says 12,000 years, better make that 18,000 because we want that next pile of bones to be ours. And you can't really blame them. They've had everything stomped and stolen from them. The only thing they have left to pass of their old ways to their kids is the little bit of control they have over their land. And if I was an Indian, I'd be fucked if you were going to take what little bit of control I had left from me.
That's why we have NAGPRA where it's at right now.
Yep.
And that's, you know, what's so interesting now. Yeah. And that's, and you know what, it's going to be like that for a lot of history. And you know, sometimes I don't blame it, because there's places, like I said, I visit a lot of places. I'm more of a boots on ground trying to do local history type things. You know, I do want to go to Egypt and all those other places. Haven't been there, but eventually I'll make it. And there's this place called the Horton House here in Georgia. And it's made out of like tabby and stuff like that. It's on the coast and stuff like that. It's on the island. And when you go up there and visit, you can see that people are scratching their names on the wall. So they're destroying history. You know what I'm saying? It's open to the public. You don't have to pay no money to go visit it. There's no gates. There's no nothing. Straight on the road. It's a historical site. It has a historical marker and everything. But as soon as you walk up to it, and this is on a rich island, mind you. So when people say there's a demographic for certain things that happens to archaeological sites, that's a bullshit lie, because this is a rich island. You know what I'm saying? And I'm telling you, you go up there and there's hundreds of scratches on there, you know, people's names, hearts, arrows, and stuff like that. I'm like, you destroying history. And then you get mad when you get older, about our age, and they done blocked it all off, fenced it off. Nobody can go there and visit. You got to pay $5 to go in there. You know what I'm saying? You got to pay for the security, this, that, and third. And you done made everything worse because your grandchildren didn't do what, or your parents before you didn't do what they were supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, it's a rough one. It goes that psychological thing again. I mean, I'm scratching my name on this rock because a bunch of other people are going to come look at it. Who the fuck wouldn't want to know who Dan Richards is? Come on. Dan Richards was here, right? That means something. Now, Kilroy was here. Who the fuck's Kilroy? But me? Come on, that's it. Everybody's brain does that. It's a fucking byproduct of the human nature. I mean, we can sit here and I can look at all of you on the screen and be like, oh, they're all feeling great, and one of you's got a fucking bad leg, and one of you's chest is hurt, and it's just like we none of us know what goes on in somebody else's reality, and so. That because of that, we end up inherently self-centered. And like a lot of people say, human nature is so nice, and that's such a fucking hippie take. I'm sorry, but like if you empowered every 1-year-old on the planet, put him in a 250-pound bodybuilder's body, we would all be fucked. We would all be fucked. They would take everything they wanted and beat our asses into the ground when we resisted.
Yeah, a cool story with that. What you were saying, like the tagging, and I didn't realize it till. I honestly just started reading like 4 or 5 years ago. I was never a big reader, but so blessed that I actually did, because there's so much more information in the books. But I was reading through Graham's stuff, and he was talking about the first time that he climbed on top of the pyramids and how he had to pay off all these guards. He said it cost him all kinds of money. He got halfway up and some more guards seen him like, wait, give us some more money. He said, I finally made it up there. He said he got to see the sunrise on top. He was describing how he felt and everything else. He said, but I think it was his father, grandfather, or someone his family, had went up there and said he carved his name.
Yep.
And said so he watched the sunrise. He said he remembered that. He got to looking, and he actually found his grandfather's carving on the pyramid. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
So Dan, what's been your most surprising thing that you've uncovered while researching claims and conspiracies? Like the most surprising to you?
Most surprising to me that I uncovered. That's a good question. I think honestly, the thing that blew my mind the most is currently would be the way that it's either the metal plate in the Great Pyramid or the way that's been handled, or the way that the Peruvian elongated skulls have been handled. Either one of those kind of just like the metal plate in the Great Pyramid was part of Howard Weiss's team. It's the same group that found the cartouches that the debunkers like to throw in everybody's faces and say that this proves that Khufu's men built the pyramid. So you get debunkers claiming that Howard Weiss's team lied about the cartouches, but then you get the skeptics claiming that Howard Weiss's team lied about this metal plate because it's an iron plate in the Bronze Age. So both sides say that they don't want to trust the scientists there, but you do some research and it's like they're actually, like about 800 miles away and like 300 years after the Great Pyramid was said to have been built, they find evidence of iron smelting right there. So it's not really a stretch to imagine them trading some pretty low grade iron to them, but nobody put that together. It's just like all sitting there. And as soon as that plate was basically proven to not have been meteoric iron, it was just dismissed out of hand like it was bullshit.
Didn't fit the narrative that they wanted to tell. So,
and even though the answer is mundane if you look, but nobody wants to do it. And the other one, the way that the elongated skulls in Peru were treated, I mean, that read like I was reading a document that was historically going through the history of it, and I felt like I was watching the fucking X-Files, man. It was insane. Like, a scientist is like, I went and opened 62 grave bundles. Each one of those elongated skulls comes in this big grave bag, right? A big burlap bag, multi-tiered textile to store a body inside. So this dude's like, I went and I opened 63 grave bundles or some such. I recorded the contents of 6 and I closed the other ones back up and put them back on the shelf. It's like, what? And over you see this kind of stuff where it's like they were selling skulls to fucking oh, come on. No, what's the dude's name? The New York, the rich bastard.
Selling skulls on the black market, man.
No, Rockefeller.
On a giant skull like
Rockefeller.
Yeah. Rockefeller bought 4 of them and was the first person to invest any money into this thing. And ever since then, every time that these skulls pop up every time anybody opens the skulls or does anything with them, shit gets shady. Like all the way up into the 70s, shit was shady. People they do a public filming of them opening a bundle, and you can't find that video or any reports of what happened. Just the fact that did happen and it was public. It's like, so the newspaper covered it. Look for the newspaper article. It's not there. It's like, whoa, fucking what the hell? That one did get me kind of feeling a little like I was sitting next to AJ from the Y-Files instead of sitting in my basement. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff actually that is another one. I'm working on it now. I'm working on this some more elongated skulls. They're kind of just not spoken of. They're kind of all over the world, and they're just kind of
Amen.
Absolutely.
You look into a Native American tribe, and they may well have been quote unquote longheads or flatheads. And you look into it and you're like, holy shit, man, nobody ever talks about this. It's like, dude, you could live right next to it and nobody's talking about it. And it's all over the place. And
Asia,
that's weird.
Africa, they found them everywhere. It's crazy.
This one. This one's a replica from one of the Paracas skulls. I take it with me to a lot of the conferences and have people sign it. But a lot of people, especially like L.A. Marzulli, a bunch of them guys went down there and studied these things, did DNA sampling, and a bunch of these, man, they got so many anomalies that don't match up to head binding, like the Saggior Sutra will be missing. The eye orbit's 20 to 30% larger, extra set of foramen magnums in the back, and that's for the arteries and nerve endings to compensate for this elongated skull. So many things, the brain case volume and bigger in some of those. So many things that point to a genetic hybrid race.
Yeah, the structure of the interior, as far as the webbing of the interiors, I've also seen is different as well.
Even the mounting, because the mount point here is all the way at the back. All human skulls mount here. So even the ones they know that are from head binding doesn't change the anchor point. But yeah, these elongated skulls, man, that's something that's really fascinated me. And
Is
got
that
me
the
down a bunch
biggest
of rabbit trails?
Hey Doc, is that the biggest thing? Is the anchor point? Like, forget this, the elongation part, right? But the anchor part, would that change a lot more in our mindset of things? Like as
I
far
think
as
it should, because it
memory?
shows you it's built into the DNA, you know, because all the ones that they have that they know are from head binding, it still doesn't change that anchor point.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what makes it. What's a problem? I joked about that in a recent video with the head binding is that you just can't grab some babies and wrap their head. So what we need to do is it's just like the foot binding. We need to clone some people and then practice both on them. So we cut the human rights violations in half, but we still get knowledge out of this.
Lord.
Feet and head, fucking do it up. But it is serious. Like here, I got this book here. This is a pretty rare one. My buddy Sean Mooney loaned me for some research I'm doing. The Chinook Sign of Freedom, Chief Comley's skull. And this is a 1959 or 1959 book from the Smithsonian Institute. And it's got this elongated skull. It's not nearly as crazy as the one you were just holding, but they repatriated this in 1960, I think, to
The mount's in the back on that one also.
But even the mount, if you look at the hole, it's farther back than it should be.
Yeah,
crazy.
This was they repatriated this. We don't have it in, and they buried it. But yeah, there's a hell of a story there, man. There was.
What's the name of the book again, Dan?
You're not gonna find it for sale anyway. It's a rare one. The Chinook Sign of Freedom: The Study of the Skull of the Famous Chief Comley. It's from the Smithsonian Institution, Washington, 1960.
Thanks.
Yep, no problem. You might find a PDF or something, but yeah, I have not been able to find that book for sale anywhere. My buddy Sean, like I said, loaned it to me. He's turned me on to some interesting stuff that's fairly local that I'm kind of doing a deep dive into. Not kind of, I'm doing a lot of work into this one, and kind of he showed me stuff that's I don't agree with everything he's pointed out to me, as he's well aware, but there's some of the stuff that he's pointed out that's so just so fucking interesting that I can't not dig as deep as I can. So me and him are going to do a road trip here soon and take a look at a few things. And yeah, it's life's crazy, man.
So that actually leads me into another question that I had, which is, have you ever investigated something that you thought was just freaking nonsense, right? But came away thinking, wait a minute, there's more to this.
I'll be honest, the maps, the old maps of Antarctica with ice-free coasts and stuff, I thought for sure when I started digging into it, I thought for sure I was going to be looking at pareidolia. I thought for sure that I was going to be, but at the end of the day, boy, did I piss some archaeologists off with this one, even though we were all buddies at that time and I wasn't really fighting with them. They all just they were all talking to me and everybody just walked away and clammed up when I said this. They didn't want to hear it. But there's, the same thing that makes me go with an archaeologist that specializes in carbon dating seeds. If he says that this seed is X number of years old, and then somebody else that doesn't carbon date seed says it's X number of years old, same thing with these maps. We've had exactly one team of professional cartographers work on it, and they came away saying that they were maps of Antarctica. Now, you start bringing out other teams of professional cartographers, that'd be great. But when you bring out historians that have a minor in cartography, it's like, well, that's nice. That's interesting, but he's a historian first. He's trying to make it fit this narrative. The Colonel Harold Z. Ohlmeyer, who was in charge of them doing the work on those maps, that motherfucker was the lead bombardier on daylight and night raid missions in World War II. He knew how to read a map. All right. He wasn't just like, oh, I think that might be this coastline. No, man, he was capable of doing that shit under fire while people trying to trick him into thinking it's over there. He was good at it. So I have to defer to the experts on that, man. So that did kind of impress me. I didn't expect it to be so robust, basically.
Yeah. Super interesting.
So how about you guys? You guys got me out answering all kinds of questions. Here, some of you, give some ideas here.
I was going to say, it's crazy that history is the way it is. Everybody has a puzzle piece. Nobody in this room or on this planet has enough time out the day to do research in every aspect of everything on this planet. Even one subject, nobody has enough time on one lifetime to learn everything. I mean, just one subject. So everybody needs to work together. I hate how a lot of people come at Graham, because I actually been following Graham for years. And I've read his books. I watched his documentaries. I go over his stuff. There was a time when I wanted to go over his stuff like everybody else did, but I was like, man, that's so saturated. Everybody's doing the same thing. Forget it. I'm not trying to go down that route. But he has a lot of questions. First, he says a lot, he basically wants to know who were the people before the Ice Age? Who were the group of individuals before that? Because obviously they were important, right? I mean, everybody's trying to find out who they are. It's just that most people don't like what he says when he's questioning their information. So this is what I hate what people do. When you're sitting in a room and you're trying to present information, you're only presenting the information based off of your own research. Now you're presenting this room and probably 50 to 100 other people. Now somebody in that room, I guarantee you, probably has some more information. And Graham takes that information and he applies it to his ideas and theories all the time. It's like he takes their stuff and almost uses it against them. And they don't just pay attention to what they say, because he's asking, okay, the first thing he asks is, well, tell me who they were before that. And 9 times out of 10, that shit held 10 out of 10, because the people like to argue with him, and they say, well, we know. Well, that's what he's trying to figure out, right? And some people don't like the word advanced civilization and this, that. How many people have actually asked him a question about what is a civilization? So this is where I kick in. So we got Flint Dibble over here, right? He was on there on Joe Rogan. He was talking about civilization. Well, he likes to go at Graham a lot. And I actually made a little song from, one of those AI things, because I thought this shit was so funny when he was on Joe Rogan. I think it was like 18 minutes in. And he said, he was talking about how he never defines the word civilization, that he almost doesn't use the word, because everybody has their own way of defining of what a civilization is, which is fair enough. But if you're going to have an argument about advanced civilization, at the bare minimum, you got to define what civilization is so everybody can understand what you're saying. That's at the bare minimum, right? Graham has done that throughout his whole entire career. So everybody that follows him doesn't need that explained anymore, right? And anybody wanted to know that was thrown off of it, because Flint himself says that they don't even worry about that anymore. Now, you're saying this from an academic point of view, that you don't have a defined definition of what a civilization is, but you want to argue about an advanced civilization. That doesn't make sense to me.
I'll take it a step further. Flint is in almost no better position than I am to tell you how much they are saying the word civilization nowadays. His specialty has fuck all to do with civilization, that overarching look at. He deals with food. He deals with food. So the definitions that he's going to be dealing with are going to be scientific definitions, and they're different than the ones that they bring out to the lay people. So most people are familiar with the difference of the term theory, but for those that aren't, a theory to us, if I say, I've got a theory about what happened on 9/11, that means I got some idea with no fucking evidence attached, or threadbare evidence. But in science, a theory is a hypothesis that stood up to numerous tests, has failed none of them. All the evidence supports it. None of the evidence opposes it. Like the theory of gravity or the theory of relativity. I ask fucking Hiroshima how hypothetical that is. It's not hypothetical, man. This is real. So it's science uses different terms. And so Flint plays a little bit of a weasel Flint plays weaselly games, and then one of them that he does there is obfuscating what that term means between both camps. It's one of the things that really, really rubs me the wrong way about him and a lot of those guys is they don't just misrepresent things when they're talking. They misrepresent things so bad that somebody watching them discuss things can walk away with a bad idea on how science is performed. They walk away with the wrong ideas in their head on a fundamental level. They remove archaeology from the picture, and they still are going to have a bad idea. The way that they handle these things is very, we're at a point in history right now where science seems to be political. You have scientists that support the left and scientists that support the right, and that's the most fucked place that science could be ever, because science is a pursuit of truth and politics is a pursuit of being a cocksucker, as far as I'm concerned. but in all honesty, politics has fuck all to do with science, but people
That's what ruins science is the politics.
Well, and when my issue is when you get to where you have scientists that people don't trust because of their political. I don't trust Fauci, or I don't trust this guy, or I don't. What you end up with is you've got people quit trusting science, and people can get science to report whatever they want, and you can't even do it in a court of law anymore, because who are you going to call out for a fucking expert? Well, right. I got a scientist, a donkey next to their name. Well, fuck you. I got a scientist in the same field with an elephant next to his. And now you got a judge standing who has no fucking idea what any of this. Oh man, we're in some very ugly. We're in a very ugly place, and it's going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better, as far as how science and the public interact. And a lot of it is the egos of people like Flint.
Right. And the scientific journals, even they themselves have come out and admitted that more than 50% of their research papers are non-reproducible in regard to,
it's over. I want to say it was over 80,000 papers were retracted in 2024. Over 80,000. And some of this is because we've got AI now, scrubbing those things and looking for, combing through them and looking for plagiarism and faulty data sets and whatnot. But a lot of it is just flat out that, I say this all the time about archaeology. When they tell me I'm not a scientist, I laugh. I was like, I'm an electrician, bitch. I did applied science. The universe told me if I was wrong. You write a paper and you give it to another archaeologist and you circle jerk all day long. You could be talking about fucking Harry Potter and none of you would ever retract the other guy's paper, and you're going to call it science. No, man, you're not a scientist,
bro. I hate when people do that, bro. I hate when people say, well, I'm this, you're not that. I hate when people throw that shit out there, because that doesn't mean any. If that's the case, then why the fuck didn't you prove what you said in the first place then? You know what I'm saying? Like, why haven't you figured it out then, since you have this degree? You're looking at it from that perspective of having that the credentials that they're looking for. So if it doesn't make sense to that non-credential person, then make it make sense to them. Make it make sense to us. You know what I'm saying? You have the education, you have the background, you have the academic. You sitting here throwing yourself on this pedestal, talking about something. Oh yeah, I got this PhD and blah 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 blah. Okay, so explain it to us idiots then.
Well, I think they try to hide behind that sophisticated language. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
It's a wall. So be the Gandalf, be the Gandalf that brings this knowledge to Middle Earth and dumb it down for us.
If it doesn't make sense, of course we're going to ask these questions, because it doesn't make sense, because you're telling us we don't have these credentials that you have. So now when we ask these questions, now it's your opportunity, since you up on this high rise and all this other shit that you got this academic, you can walk around and say, hey, I'm doctor this. Okay. Well, now prove it to us. Tell us what we need to know. Show me the facts, because guess what? There's other PhD right over here saying that you're a crock of bullshit. So both y'all got PhD. So which one am I supposed to believe now? Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? Tell me that. Riddle me that, Batman. That's all I'm saying.
That part has fallen to shit with it. Like I was saying, it's got to where we can't trust science anymore. And Carl Sagan was the guy that really he brought the lights from Gandalf to the masses with cosmology and freaking astronomy, and he got all kinds of shit. His colleagues grilled him and just picked on him all the time. Go write another paper for the fucking idiots, and we're going to go write a paper for. And Sagan published papers, but it wasn't his focus was science education. And the thing is, in all honesty, I personally think a lot of the reason that guys like him get a lot of shit is because they are same reason that Lee Berger, if you remember the Cave of Bones, if any of you saw that on Netflix, he got he got all kinds of shit from archaeologists and anthropologists. And the reason is because these guys, generally speaking, a real good scientist is not just a bit of a nerd. They're fucking socially awkward. They're weird. And that's fine and good in the lab, but it really sucks when you put them on a TV screen and they're trying to convince normal people that this guy that you were like somebody checked that motherfucker's hard drive. You don't want to have this guy talking on to the public and everybody's like, oh, this is the font of knowledge. We're all looking at this guy down this. But it used to be that the only time you would see those kinds of scientists was on freaking PBS at 3 a.m. And otherwise you were going to get a Carl Sagan type. You were going to get a guy that knew how to talk to the camera and give you a little shuck and jive. And hey guys, welcome back. And here's what we're going to talk about today. And then when you don't get that, instead we get these guys that are fucking, or that are egotistical and get all red faced and screamy, or basically the facade that scientists hid behind for centuries fell to shit in the social media era when they all got to get on Twitter and scream about stupid shit. And they all start doing all the goofy shit that everybody makes fun of. And it's like, okay, so you're just people like us, but you're kind of a worse person than us, because most of us at least know how to dress and like don't say the stupid ass shit you do. So yeah,
a lot of us know how to use common sense too. They don't.
Einstein said, if you can't explain your idea to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself, which is,
yes.
Right.
Hey,
it's
I was in y'all.
Love that.
Yeah, y'all know I was in the military. We call it keep it simple, stupid. That's what we would say.
Kiss.
Keep it simple, stupid. That's what we would say.
Yep.
So if you can't keep it simple, stupid to me, I guess what you're saying just ain't holding up then. Because I you know, when people talk, you mentioned the word gravity. You don't have to explain gravity to me. I pick up this goddamn phone and let go of it. It's going to hit the ground. That's all I need to know. Anything that I pick up is going to eventually hit the ground. That's all I need to know about gravity. Now, if I want to get into the scientific theory of relativity and all this other stuff, my mind is going to be ain't going down that road. But I know the simple thing, foundational aspect of what gravity is. So, you know, all that other argument and theories that everybody else had, that's still up in the air.
Better explain it like Barney.
Actually, I think the idea of gravity that's handed to us is completely wrong. That's my opinion. One thing I wanted to ask you about and get into a little bit more, since this is the Occult Rejects. When it comes to like ritual stuff, was there places that you thought like for sure definitely had areas that you were like there was ritual shit going on here?
Oh,
and what made you think that? Like why?
Well, there's like certain places where we see those like bloodletting stones where they're pretty clearly made to like collect blood when you cut something. And I mean, that's, you know, I mean, I guess you could be eating the blood or making black pudding out of it, but I would go out on the limb and say most of those cultures are probably using it for some sort of ceremonial purposes, given what most cultures tend to think about blood. I can't think of any culture actually that doesn't have some weird spiritual significance attached to blood. There's it gets tricky because I mean the word ritual is so vague and so.
Yeah.
I mean, my last video I actually just talked about a little bit. I joked about how a baseball player picks up his bat and touches it in a certain way. That's a ritual, right? So
Yeah, they watch their socks for 2 weeks. I think you said or something like that.
Yeah, it gets difficult to know what. But there are places for sure. There's some dark places like that people have done some fucked up stuff. There's no question. Like you know, in Comicon Tepe, Graham Hancock mentioned it at the first season of Ancient Apocalypse. How that face that's sticking out of the side of the wall just looks
That
like
Beetlejuice head.
Yeah, it's fucking. That thing's ugly as fuck, man. That thing's scary looking. It's big, just like kissy lips and shit. It's like you could imagine that enclosure being like filled with water or something. It'd be a pretty scary little spot there. But you know, I think that the pyramids, honestly, like, do you guys watch History for Granted at all? He covers a lot of the more mechanical aspects of Egyptian things. A lot of he's a pretty good channel. He's not mainstream, but he's not alternative, I guess you'd say. He does some like the chimney in the Bent Pyramid, for example. He went and took the best photographs of that since the 70s. And he's got he's got theories on the portcullis doors on the Great Pyramid and how they were designed to be lowered and raised multiple times. Well, they weren't designed to be dropped and locked the pharaoh in there forever. It was designed to be accessible and people come and go. And that implies it was more of an area of cultural of a ritual significance, and that would make sense. Like we've opened one sarcophagus that was in a pyramid; it was sealed, but it had no body in it. So it does make sense that you know, the Egyptians had like 42 gates, I think it was, that they had 42 stations basically they would go through in their afterlife. And I don't see a reason why they wouldn't reenact some of that on the earth. And, go stick his body in this one for 6 weeks and stick his body in that one for 6 weeks and stick his body and then travel it over here and present. I mean, I personally think there could have well been a whole big ass year-long ceremony whenever a pharaoh died that really got the whole country behind it for a time. It would make sense given what we see. I mean, some of these things, it beggars belief to think that it would be one person's project to have all the GDP go into Khufu's pyramid, for example. Come on, I personally think there was more than nothing involved in that, except for I was here. Right? That's scratching on a rock.
I was even saying, I think a few days ago, that's funny how, like, growing up, I believed that those things were built just to house a few dead people.
Yeah. It's
you went through all that. You could just have a fucking graveyard like everybody else.
Yeah,
I think it did multiple things. I know this guy, Ken Goodsworth. He's actually a publisher. He actually published my book. Actually, he talks about and there's a lot of evidence about it. About some of these pyramids being used as chemical plants, like to make methane and certain stuff like that. And he goes in details in his book. It's just interesting that
there's different theories on why the pyramids were made, and I think that there was a multi-use type thing because of the simple fact that I don't think it's just for the dead. I'm sure somebody said, "Hey, I want my body to be dead, buried in there." I'm pretty sure somebody said that along the lines, but I don't think it was solely made for that. They have the king's chamber, they have the queen's chamber, they have this, they have that. And everybody comes up with their ideas. But one of the things that I'm always interested in is the idea of how the pyramids were made. A lot of people always says it takes 20 years. It took 20 years. That's what the consensus is. But if you actually read, I believe it's Herodotus' books, he actually says 30 years. He says 10 years for the ramp and then 20 years for everything else. Now, this is a guy that wrote how the pyramids were back then. This is the first historian. This is supposed to be the father of historian that actually talks about how it's built, but he never talks about the usages, basically. Like, he never gets in detail on how the usages were made. And what we also know, or what I also should say I know, is that the pyramids is also in layers. It's not just one whole thing built over layers. So a lot of times some people would say, that they did one thing and then they decided to add something else, and then something they decided to add something else, and then it just came out to what it be. But it's just theories. And being it lined up to the stars, some people say that it's not lined up to the stars, that it's not, that it is actually just close. It's close, but not that close. But like you said, when you go outside now, you got a lot of light pollution. And 9 times out of 10, most people are looking down on their phones anyway. They're not looking at the sky. Their sky was their television, like it is as ours today. So them looking in the skies and building things according to the stars and this, that, and the third is going to be pretty accurate, especially if you see the sun rise in the same spot over and over again. You're going to be like, oh, yeah, let's build something here. This would be pretty cool. And it's just to coming together as a group of individuals trying to do something. Now, when you said, the myths and rituals and stuff like that, I think the rituals was the, being consistent with something. And that's how civilization was able to go forward, being consistent with what we was doing, always making sure that we paid attention to the stars for agricultural needs, paying attention to the stars because you never know when the floods are going to hit. You might have to move your land and so forth, or your home or your residence from one spot to another to avoid the catastrophe and stuff like that. And that's where all these myths start telling these stories for entertainment wise, no different than when you watch Superman and Spider-Man, when they talk about that stuff, they're keeping these stories entertaining for people. But sometimes some people can say, hey, there was actually not a Spider-Man in the sense of that idea, but there was actually a Spider-Man God, right? So, and they get some of the remnants to make it the Spider-Man show and stuff like that. And it's just interesting that these myths has been carried forward because we've been looking at those stars for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. The ancient Egyptians, like to start with, you just talked about the 20-year pyramid. I'll start there. That's That I've referred to as the gateway drug to being a pyramidiot. You take any construction worker and tell him that it's take 20 years to build a pyramid. They're just like, all right, fuck you. What's the other alternatives? Because that's just I'm just out. That's just stupid. I'm sorry, that's just stupid. So I think that's one of the biggest things. I personally think that if the fourth dynasty is when started and finished the pyramids, that it would be 3 at a time. I think that you would be breaking ground on your sons as you finished yours, or as you finished yours, broke ground on your grandsons, and we're halfway done with your sons. I think that was a constant thing for a few generations there, assuming that was that they were all built in the fourth dynasty, like the historians say they were. But when it gets into the like Herodotus, he's repeating what he was told by an Egyptian priest. So his information is basically operating under the assumptions the Egyptians actually built them and still knew how they were built and what had happened and whatnot. If it was a different culture, like a lot of people believe that had built them and then the Egyptians came in, or that the Egyptians were just whacked so hard that they couldn't, that some cataclysm threw them back into where they were spending a little bit of time in more substance-based things. You don't tend to care so much about your, esoteric things when you're worried about eating. So it wouldn't take a couple generations to lose a lot of these things. Hell, it wouldn't take a couple generations to lose a lot of this stuff. I talk a lot about how, stone was the premier building material for millions of years, literally millions of years. Hominids were using it long before human beings were ever a thing. And so, parent taught child for millions of years, little tricky techniques. Now think about whatever trade you do and the little stupid tricks that somebody taught you how to cut onions or some bullshit. I'll imagine millions of years of accumulated knowledge like that. How fucking good these guys had to be with stone. And then in one generation, somebody comes along with metal, and all of a sudden, how much do you know about horseback riding compared to your great grandpa?
Right.
Hey,
locked.
That's a good
bro,
point.
That I was just going to say that, dog. That's a good ass point, bro. And it's so crazy that you say that, because I did I talked to a couple of different people, and the pyramids in Egypt aren't the oldest pyramids. There are pyramids in Peru that are older, right? A lot of people are, but they're not the same type of pyramids, of course. And then you have the mounds in North America that predate the pyramids, and of course you had to start with mounds, and then pyramid, clay, bricks, stone, stuff like that. But when you said that Herodotus, he got it from the priest. I agree with you 100% on that. My question is, where does the telephone game really begin? You know what I mean? Like, where does that begin at? And how accurate is it? Because, he might have said 20, 30 years, or he said 30 years. I'm not going to say 20. I actually read 30 from his books. Yeah. He says 30 years, but what did that 30 years equivalent to? You know what I'm saying? How did you consider your days at that time? Because, we didn't consider our days the same that we counted 30,000 years. Say again, Mark?
With the drifting calendars of the time,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Days coming up missing, some,
Well,
the
look
Greeks.
at this. You study the Sumerian Kings list quite a bit, Tyrone. The Sumerian Kings list is a great example of, like, it's why they call Herodotus the first historian, because the Sumerian Kings list, you go out and you read a list of kings' names once every generation plus, because it's probably safe to assume that the kings are outliving your commoners for the most part. So the odds of anybody actually remembering, these illiterate fucks didn't write it down, so they didn't remember the kings list. So the whole point of the kings list isn't to record history, is to legitimize the cocksucker I'm putting on the throne right now. So the whole point of saying that it took 30 years, that could have took 300. We're 10 times better than history records us as. And all it takes is, again, one generation to tell that lie. And we see this shit over and over and over, all the way up into World War II. When there was a battle, the Mariana Turkey shoot, where the Americans just shot the fuck out of the Japanese fighters. They'd be down like 150 some odd fighters in one day, just wrecked their naval air force. And they were so scared to report that to their high command. They were like, yeah, we lost 2 planes. We lost 3 planes. The next day, they lost 2 more. They tried to triple and drip feed these losses in, because they were trying. You see it with a lot of battle records. If you look at the Russians and the Germans' takes on things, it's like, well, looks like both sides won that battle, and you kind of just have to go to an outside perspective to see people. I get, like Mel Gibson says at the beginning of Braveheart, man, history's written by the winners, right? It's how it goes.
Well, and I was going to bring up this idea of, these arts, that are basically refined and then lost and then found again. When you get into the Masonic texts, they talk about the fact that at the Tower of Babel, that these Cushites, these ancient, Ethiopians that were these builders of colossal edifices, essentially at the Tower of Babel, they say that the art of masonry was lost. And then and then the people were scattered and essentially didn't come back again until the building of Solomon's temple. So there's these ideas, and the same thing with metallurgy. It goes back 7,000 years, essentially the first earliest smelting, piles we can find. But if you go back into like Enoch and all these stories of the fallen ones, they were bringing these ideas of, advanced physics, of metalworking, of all these, things that, were the mysteries essentially.
And Lamech, he was actually listed in the Bible. His son, it said specifically that he was gifted the
Lamech,
knowledge of metallurgy.
Sure. Yeah,
Lamech's son. Yeah.
Yep, it's interesting how fire, metallurgy, agriculture, these are never handed to us by people. We don't. I mean, it makes you wonder how we're going to look at Einstein in 5,000 years. The God came down, split the atom, and blew up Japan.
Yeah.
It's just weird because humans it's one of the things, like what we were saying about, like, when did the bullshit start in the Egyptian narrative? And I mean, one of the things that I would use, and a lot of historians would too, is about the time when the leaders start living more than a couple hundred years. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the story's going a little bit off the fucking rails here. We're getting into legend and myth, and about the time at their ages, like with the Assyrian kings list, when they start lining up with astronomical ages, it's like clearly, this is allegorical. This is not talking about one person's lifespan. That's how I look at it. It's very, very clearly, this is talking about an age, and it's so far gone. Again, to reference World War II, go to any World War II group on Facebook and watch the guys debate which unit patch was worn by which unit at which time. And Patton's wife said they had to move that patch from their left hand to their breast. And what date was that? And the Civil War, even worse. And that's Civil War 150 fucking years ago, man. And they're gonna. So if they can't tell me what button that we wrote down on a card and put it in a fucking file in the same country that we live in now, they can't tell me what button Private so-and-so wore on his shirt, but you're going to tell me what happened in ancient Egypt 15,000 years ago. Sorry, dude. You don't have any fucking clue. We have threadbare whispers is all we got. We have gossamers of truth in these documents once they get so far. So especially when you look at it, I think one of the great examples of this is looking at the myth of the flood, from the difference between Plato and Noah. And with Noah, you have the gods are angry. The God is angry. It supports monotheism. Don't fuck with God. Don't break the rules. If you're a good person, you do what God says, you'll be saved. Follow the one true God. But with the Greek version, they're a warlike people. They're democratic. They're noble. They use the same precious metals on their temples that the Greeks did. These are cultural lenses, man. What is great about Noah is was great to Moses, because he's the one who wrote the fucking story, if assuming Moses existed. And what was great about Atlantis was what was great to Plato, because he's the one that wrote the fucking story. Now, I don't think there wasn't some truth to what he was going with. I think that these guys were absolutely informed by an outside thing, but they're a storyteller, right? And I go look at whose version of King Arthur and the Knights of the Holy Grail excels nowadays, except for the one that's got somewhat of a different take. The stories evolve over time, and they take on the cultural lens of the culture that has them. So I personally think that's something we get. I think in one generation's time. I don't think, if any of you know who the cargo cults are.
Oh,
yeah. It takes one generation's time, and the history just gets completely fucked.
So I was going to say, now when you go back to these ancient flood stories, Yahweh, the storm god, was mad, and then you have Jupiter was upset with the noisiness of the humans. But I was down in Newport this weekend, and I was talking to a sailor, and he was talking about the sea in regard to a storm and he said, the sea was angry. So it's these, just these common little ideas that add weight to expanding mythos of these things. And over time, like through the telephone system, you essentially have these mythos that just grow and grow and grow and become of godly proportions.
Yeah,
it's interesting y'all talking about the flood story, because I like to talk about that. So when it comes to the flood story, every civilization on this planet started by a body of water. It doesn't matter. Right. It don't matter what you want to think. Every civilization started by a body of water. Why? Because we need water to survive for our body. Now, maybe not in that generation time frame, but in a generation after or a generation after, a flood will happen. Well, what do you do when a flood comes? Well, you leave the area. In those times, people paid attention. I said it earlier. People paid attention to the stars. They needed to know when it was time for agricultural needs, raining season. So they might have needed to move and so on and so forth. So every civilization has a flood story because they lived by a body of water that eventually flooded. Now we go to 2025. There are billions of Christians. Well, guess what story is going to be told the most? The Christian story. Right, a monotheistic religion, just like y'all two just talked about. Well, what are other monotheistic religions? Well, we know that people have the Islamic faith out there. That's a monotheistic
Christianity
religion.
and Judeo. It's all Judeo based.
Exactly.
All Abrahamic, and they all believe.
So that's what people are. When people are on the telephone, that's the one they're talking about. But you don't get to the specifics until you talk to people that are,
even when you get into the Native American tales, you have the various tales of the the cursed treasures are under the seas, from the time of the Great Flood. You have these stories like in Mesa Verde. If you go out and look at those, petroglyphs that are out there, they basically talk about the different tribes and clans that are fleeing from this catastrophe. There's stories, what was it, there's the one story that the tribe ruled great over the land until a greater tribe rose up and took them as slave, and then there was a giant wave that overtook the land, only leaving fragments of the people. So even in these within American culture, within South American culture, you see these flood stories consistently throughout.
And it's because they lived by water. It's entertainment. They didn't have TV, telephones, tablets, cell phones, computers, and all this other shit. Everybody had to entertain themselves. I mean, hell, anybody that went fishing knows that when you go fishing or hunting, when you next to your buddy, y'all are sitting here telling some bullshit stories. Your buddy's lying about some shit.
Fire and everybody's drawn in, like Feronius, bringing everybody, centralizing them, telling stories, and these stories, especially when you're relating that to these hinges, and getting into the cosmological turnings, that becomes the story behind all the stories, essentially.
Now think about it when somebody else says, "Hey, I had that happen to me." So now two myths come into one. Because you're telling what happened to your buddy, and now you're saying, "Hey, I had the same exact thing, and this is what happened to me." Now you told that story. Now the person that's listening to it, they might want to be lazy and just be like, "This is what this one person went through," and got that there were two individuals involved.
Well, and then that would develop into essentially the priesthood that would be in charge of telling the stories. They were the authorized storytellers.
Yeah, because they was like, wait a minute, I know this guy said this.
Training, Yeah,
you're right, bro. You absolutely right. Because that person was like, yo, I remember him saying that. And I remember this guy say that, but they're saying this one story. No, hell no, it's two stories. Y'all need to get this shit together. We need to write this shit down. And that's how writing happened.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, see, I take Graham's standpoint on that flood narrative. If you have so many similar stories across the world, across the continent, there has to be something to it. There's a grain of truth there. And I think they're looking back to this, what scientists call the Young Dryas period. If you guys are into that kind of flood stuff, and there's a guy, his name was Dr. Walt Brown. He actually worked for NASA, and he wrote a book called In the Beginning. That is one of the best pieces of literature that I've ever read on the Young Adrias event and what he believed happened. Which it's a long-winded thing. I'll spare you, but if that stuff interests you, definitely check that out.
Yeah, it makes sense. And just think about it. That's why I said instead of it being one whole flood story, right? It's multiple people, different perspectives. It's not every animal was saved on one boat. It was every animal that was important to humanity saved on multiple arcs.
Well,
right?
But now there's if you
possibility.
if you get into the Persian stories, they actually talk about the var, which is where the word art comes from. And the var was actually underground. And they talk about how many riding lengths it was. And they basically brought all of the miscellaneous plants and, animals into this cave underground because of the evading frost. And essentially, so this is pre-Ice Age, mythology versus the Ark literature, which is, basically the flood when all the ice melted. It's interesting, the dichotomy of these stories.
They actually have a place like that right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please. I have actually a bunch of questions I would like to still get in.
Yeah, go ahead.
I need to eventually before we run out of time. Sorry, I would just keeping it real. Dan, I hate to go back to it, but I would like to go back to the ritual stuff. I know it's been about 20 minutes now, but
you're fine.
Like
Whatever.
Because you're somebody who's been there and seen this stuff, I would like to take advantage of that. When it comes to these places that you think are rituals, did you ever notice would they have nothing inscribed in them, or do they have actual symbols in these areas as well?
And
this is like one of like 3 questions, so please, everybody, just
I'm not. Some areas seem to have some symbols. I mean, usually, how do you put it? There are areas that I would think that are, like I said, I think the rituals were done in the pyramids, and those are definitely devoid of symbols. But yeah, a lot of places have a lot of symbols slapped on them. It just depends on the culture that was doing it. To some, less was more, it seems.
Did you ever notice like maybe a certain type, like maybe spirals or certain ones that almost seemed very reminiscent?
The spiral motif is pretty common. Yeah, that spiral, the cross, the spiral, cross, the circle. I mean, the circle's not too complicated, but yeah, those ones. I mean, the cross is a pretty normal one too. All of those are ones you're going to see in nature, and I think the spiral's one that somebody that looked at water would probably be pretty into, especially if they started feeling like they were seeing that sort of pattern in the stars at all or something, if they felt like they could extrapolate that to anything.
Yeah. This is a little specific though.
You're fine.
Just to keep on going on with the same one. Would you notice these like maybe prior to entering the ritual area, or it's in the ritual area?
Depends. It very much.
Do you understand like what I'm trying to get at, right?
Yeah. Like, in some places, like it seems like there's some areas where it seems like they try to just slap you in the face with symbolism if you get it. There are certain towns here on the West Coast where I live where there are planned cities, and some of them are pretty. I mean, I get pretty skeptical about this stuff. Some of them are pretty clearly influenced by people that were in the Freemasonry and shit, right? I mean, when they build the city streets certain ways and whatnot, it's like, okay. I'm pretty skeptical of a lot of this stuff, but I don't have to believe adrenochrome works to believe that some people do, and that they can do some goofy shit in the name of adrenochrome, right? So, so this is where like there are a lot of things where they just kind of seem to just try to browbeat you with symbolism just as soon as you get it. But then again, I mean, there's times where I could just not be getting the symbolism, so I'm missing it, right? I'd like to think that I know everything, but as my teenager constantly reminds me, I'm a fucking idiot. So
with
that.
The reason I'm asking is because I know there are some places where it does seem like that some of these symbols might actually be representing a frequency that needs to be used with the room. Because you'll have the frequency of the earth, you'll have the frequency of the building, and then like whatever you're trying to equal, you could probably have to make to bring the both together, like maybe with like whatever music or stuff going on inside the room. Which, if that's possible, leads me into like my next question, and kind of. Do you think like you're talking about these containers in the pyramids? Do you think it's possible it actually really wasn't technically meant for dead people at first?
I think that's possible, but I don't. Like, I have some serious problems with a lot of the hypotheses that surround it. Like, to start with, like, I worked as an electrician for a long time, and there's most of these, like, we were talking about the chemical power plant hypothesis earlier. Jeffrey Dumb from Land of Ken has made a bunch of videos about that. And I like a lot of what he has to say. These aren't outlandish in and of themselves, but we do have some problems, like the piezoelectric effect that they talk about quite frequently. It's real. I mean, you operates a quartz watch. It operates a charcoal igniter. That's where your spark comes from, on those little charcoal wands that you use to light your. But there's very specific things that have to be done. The crystal has to be sandwiched between pieces of metal. You have to separate that current into a positive and a negative, so that it's usable. Otherwise, it dissipates immediately. The pyramid is made of limestone, the same as the bedrock. So there really isn't a functional difference between the pyramid and the ground. So that's going to make your electricity just kind of, it's going to want to seep away as soon as you generate it. If to take an entire block that's got little pieces of limestone suspended in the matrix, and then to harness all the electricity when that block was pressed down on, for example, you would have to have all of the quartz crystals would have to be magnetically aligned, which that's not happening in 2-ton blocks, man, unless you're talking lottery winners, one after the, I mean, 1,000,000,000 to 1 odds over and over and over for each one of those blocks. And then you'd have to sandwich it between metal, like I was saying earlier. You'd have to have a piece of metal on top and bottom of each brick. So them harnessing electricity on the pyramid is something that if I was handed that and told to install it, I'd be like, man, I don't know how the fuck this is going to work. This ain't going to happen. What part am I missing here? Am I not included with this? So I don't see the piezoelectric thing. I think that one is it's a non-starter. So that limits a lot of the technological things that I've heard come out of the pyramid. Almost all of the ones that get into goofy technology at all tend to lean on the piezoelectric qualities of quartz. And another one, like the 2 little pieces of copper that we have in the door, and people are like, oh, that could have carried electricity. It's like that voltage drop is a thing, and it's calculable, and you lose electricity based on how far you go. The only way to counter that is with bigger pieces of wire. That's why if you drive from a dam to the next city and it's like 100-mile jaunt, you'll notice the power cables above you are that fucking big around. And that's not to attract tweakers. That's to keep the electricity flying down the road. So in the pyramid, when you got these little pieces of wire that are about, millionth of an here, 1/8 of an inch thick, they ain't carrying very much, especially in a 750-foot run. So, my technical knowledge makes it where that there's certain parts of that I am skeptical of. Now, I am all about anything that can be demonstrated, or again, like I said, I don't want to be cynical. I want to be skeptical about things. So I'm perfect. If somebody talks to me about things and shows me where I'm wrong on some of this, I'm perfectly happy to discuss it. But by and large, as fast as that electricity is generated from the piezoelectric effect, it's going to pour into the ground. So like we see those. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. All right. Well, I just have kind of one last question, and it's kind of be long and drawn out to an extent. One of the reasons, and I'm not trying to say all this to brag, it's just my experience where I go along with this story. Now, certain things with, you hear about these tombs. If you think about the top being on, you can't even get the fuck out if you're in there. Probably you can't even push the thing off. You hear about people going in caskets. When I used to be a ceremonial, still I'm a magician. I just haven't really done any rituals, but I used to be a ceremonial magician. I used to be a member of the Ordo Templi Orientis. And I used to do ceremonial, shit a lot. And I'll keep it real. I used to use the Astrum Argentum hood and robe when I did it. Now that has no mouthpiece at all. It is just eyes. So now if you're fumigating and you got all this smoke going on and you're supposed to be vibrating these words real hard to exhaustion, you're going to start having oxygen deprivation. And you're going to start having fucking weird experiences. So could that be, and what I'm getting at is now, could that be what's being used in it? It's kind of a double question. And the people who are deeming these areas as rituals, have they ever actually been in one, participated in one, or written one themselves to know what a ritual is and what the fuck's going on?
I think some of them have. There is you can rent the Great Pyramid to have seances in and shit. Like and numerous people have done that over the years. So I'm, you know, they're gonna have varying degrees of experience and expertise and all that stuff. But as far as people like these different rituals affecting your mind in a certain way, I mean, that's almost guaranteed to be part of it.
Right.
Like you're talking about basically you're getting out of the realm of scientific inquiry and into the realm of personal experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, it's one of my favorite things. I babble about this all the time. It's one of my favorite things about the book or the movie Contact is that for those of you who've seen that, I assume most of you have seen it, Contact, the one where Jodie Foster falls through the little ball and talks to her dad that's actually an alien thing, right? All the scientific skepticism in the world. She's a scientist. She's dealing with scientists. Carl Sagan was a scientist, an atheist. And when it's all said and done, she had a personal experience. Take it or leave it. But
Right.
fuck you. This is what happened to me. You don't believe me? Go crawl on the ball and fall through it your goddamn self. That's how, to me, that's a huge part of it, right? Like in order to have any like scientific discussion, you kind of have to start from a places. You have to make some assumptions. Like I have to assume that we both exist. You're not a figment of my imagination. You're not my dream, and this isn't all just my reality. And you're nothing. We have to assume that reality exists. We have to assume that like we can learn from reality that if I throw this, it's not just going to keep flying one time and fall the next. There's patterns, and if we make these assumptions, we can have a conversation about reality, about science and stuff. But if we don't, then one of us can sit here and be like, well, yeah, man, but you're just a figment of my imagination anyway. Well, yeah, man. And those kinds of ritual things where you alter your state of consciousness, this does get into things that are, I forget the dude's name, but who the geneticist that said that LSD helped him crack DNA, right?
Crick.
There, thank you. This isn't, this isn't without precedent. Those spirals that you're talking about and stuff earlier, those are almost certainly, some of these symbols that we see all over the place, almost certainly part of magic mushrooms or, peyote or whatever the hallucinogen of choice was amongst those people. You definitely see it in South American, Native American art. You definitely see it, those zigzaggy lightning bolt patterns that, for those of you who have eaten mushrooms, which I totally never have, but you may or may not see those kinds of things. So, there's certain stuff you can recognize, and it's almost why it's a funny thing to me actually, where so many people will be like, "Oh, Graham does hallucinogens, and therefore his opinion on these things is just all tainted by all this goofiness." It's like, okay, let me ask you a question. You think that the guy that was in charge of the people and told them to build that pyramid, you think that fucker never did no hallucinogens? He was a fucking royalty in a time when that shit was like,
yeah.
Who do you think commissioned him to figure out the fucking formula for ayahuasca, you dumb shit? You think it was some poor person? Some tweaker? No, it was a royalty. Yeah, royalty, man. People that were elites. So I think it's a good lens to look through a lot of that stuff in is hallucinogens. A lot of things I don't think we'll understand properly without altering our state of consciousness.
Right.
I think that helps. It's kind of like a little bit of like a cheat code to magical experience, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Like some people take mushrooms, or you can go to the extreme, like Flatliners, the movie.
Well, have any of you read Carlos Castaneda?
Oh yeah.
Okay, one of the experiences that he spoke of that I thought was really cool was where he'd been dosed dozens and dozens of times. He had his reality just kicked in multiple times, and his shaman sets him sitting, looking, like meditating and looking across a field at a tree, and he sees a white dot behind the tree, and then the white dot begins to grow, and it does all this goofy shit, and it just fills his mind, and he sees all these visions, and he's sober. He's not on mushrooms at the time. And then his shaman goes over and walks over to the tree, and the root, the seed of that white thing that he saw was a little towel that the shaman had tied to the tree. He didn't hallucinate any. The shaman had planted a seed.
Right.
And, things like that are... on the flip side of that, I talk about experience I had a lot where I saw something that it wasn't real. I got out of the tub when I was young, and the window I saw a guy in like a hazmat suit, like staring at the window, and he was angry and he's looking right at me. And he looked mad, and I was like freaking the fuck out. And then like I did this instead of turning to run, and when I shifted, it was light and fog on the window in my imagination. And that made it like, that's a lot of the reason I'm as skeptical as I am, because I know that what I saw wasn't real. But had I ran out of that room, you still couldn't convince me to this day that I hadn't seen it. So, and this is, you know, you get, which is where why I brought up like these presuppositions we have to take, because you get it gets philosophical. It gets outside of the realm of science. Like Lao Tse famously said, last night I dreamt that I was a butterfly. Or was that a butterfly dreaming he was Lao Tse right now? It's, you know, we really, these things we really get into. The reason that people ask questions about God and, you know, eternity and all these kinds of things, because, you know, we have these ideas that our experience doesn't coincide with. We believe in perfection. We believe in infinity. We understand these things, but our experiences in no way, shape, or form back that up. This is just complete us making it up.
Right. Well, and interesting with brain science, I saw an article on the fact that they could go in and monitor how the vision perceives an item and then how the brain recalls what it is. And it'll basically shift through different, you know, images until it hits the right one. And then you have the realization. So during the time that it's shifting through those things, the potential of, you know, seeing anything is there.
Yeah.
You know, so if you put yourself into this liminal state, then it's all, you know, platonic subjective reality.
That's very, very true. And a lot of people will say that that's, you know, just a bunch of pseudoscientific hippie ass woo. But in my opinion, like psychology is the fundamental. I say it all the time. It's a soft science, soft as fuck, because it's self-reported data. So you get like, you know, Epstein's clients didn't say that they had these weird fetishes when they were talking to their psychiatrists, right? They people that self-report tend to fucking lie. But if you don't look through all of this stuff through the lens of psychology, you're going to fall into so many pitfalls. You know, one of the best thought tools I use for this is just to look at the electromagnetic spectrum and then look at that tiny little sliver that you can actually suss. We have to build tools to go and see everything else.
Right.
That's
That is a good point too.
We're little monkeys with these crazy ideas of lofty ideas. Oh, we could be perfect and we could never sin and we could make this world where nobody ever suffered and all this. And then, yeah, but when I get off here, I'm going to go eat something that was alive. Fuck that thing. It's dead now. It's probably like 100 things ground together. And then maybe I'll go fuck something after I take a dump. It's like, we're just we're just
Primal.
animals. We're fucking animals, man.
I wanted to bring up an example of the anthropomorphic tummy holding you mentioned earlier in terms of a modern iteration of monkeys. The wise monkeys are usually known as the three wise monkeys: hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil, excuse me. The three. There is the missing fourth, the often unpresented fourth monkey, who is called fear no evil. And this monkey holds his dantian, or center in Chinese, below the belly button, where our energy is stored and emits from in Taoist conceptuality. But he's holding the center and being fearless and unmoved compared to the other monkeys that are partial minded and so forth. I wonder what you think of that, and maybe if you could break down some more of that global symbolism of the tummy holding.
Nice.
Oh yeah, well, first of all, I love Taoism, and I think it's a great example of the Tao Te Ching is a book of basic proverbs and truth, and then it quickly gets into the weeds with further books. But some of them still contain secret, like a lot of times little glimpses of truth. But like probably the most advanced Taoist text I've read was The Secret of the Golden Flower, and by the time you get there, you are definitely into the weeds as far as you are no longer one with water. Right? Let's just put it that way. You've
difficult to understand.
You've strayed a long ways from just trying to not do anything and not be anything and not fight with yourself and not strive. You've come a long way from the Tao Te Ching at this point. But it is It is interesting that they do believe that the seat of the chakra stuff aligns a lot with this, the Kundalini and all that aligns well with the idea of the holding of the navel. Now that the navel stuff pops up again with metallurgy and or agriculture. Almost everywhere you see it, it's almost like it was this knowledge this packet that was passed around, and it was like the people would learn how to farm, they would learn how to smelt, and at the same time they would start making this motif was one of the motifs that would crop up. And honestly, it seems pretty basic to me what it represents. If but again, we're rutting animals, right? But if I've got so much food that I don't need to be a rutting animal, I can put my hand on my stomach and just to symbolize that I'm full. And that even goes to what the ones in the Taz-Tepelar culture. A lot of times they're literally holding their dick in their hand. And if you've got no TV and nothing to do all day because you have a surplus of food, what will you be doing? So, as you know, these ancient people, they fucked a lot. And so these were symbols of these things. I personally think that was like part of the symbol. It was braggart. Look, I've got time. We make better tools. We store more food. And to prove it, look. And then you look at the statues of women they made. It was the same kind of thing. Look, our women are so fucking fat, they can't even get off the chair. They're fed. They had some very weird ideas that would show up in this initial run of agriculture,
and you see it woven all through the mythology as well.
You do.
Yes,
you do.
Yes.
You see that same fat woman with animal on both sides. A lot of the master of beasts are overweight women. And
Kybele, yeah, with the two lions, yeah.
And that's that master of beast symbol is, in my mind, part of that same whole thing, where it's like these things used to chase us. Now we cage them and trade them.
Right.
Fucking, I'm gonna just go. Yeah, but we are a whole nother level now, and so that's shown with a obese woman is like everything a prehistoric dude would want. Here's a naked chick. She's got plenty of food and she's mastered animals. It's like
she's ready to reproduce too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Clearly, if she hasn't already.
Right.
Yeah, it is funny. One of the theories, one of the hypotheses, I should say, that anthropologists have for those Venus statues is that they were like prehistoric porn. Like some kid takes a little statue behind the tree. Like, God damn it, dude! Like, man, you couldn't just hang out like by the tent the chicks were standing by or something, look in every now and again. Oh no, I got to spend like 200 hours. I personally never bought that hypothesis, but I've always mocked it because it's funny.
Yeah, no, I don't get that either. I've even pointed out, and not to go on, and I just do think there might be something behind it. Because you mentioned Venus, there's a lot of times like she'll be shown just like one breast showing. I'm trying to show a case with just my idea of the Knox formula from Crowley. I think a lot of it has to do with the optic nerve and crossing, certain shit like that. And in part of his ritual, he does have you act like you're Isis breastfeeding. A nipple will be exposed. When the baby puts its mouth on the nipple, it actually connects to the mother's pineal gland.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it is this whole that baby's gonna know where it is, the time and day, and all that from the mother's pineal gland. So I mean, maybe it's not that deep because I know Crowley. People think things about him. I'm not saying he was a great guy either, but maybe there is some science in there. Maybe there isn't. But I mean, there is a definite connection with breastfeeding in the pineal gland from both his mother and child. So I do wonder if that's even being symbolized in there as other things.
I don't know. I had once. I used to do eBay a lot for a living, and I stumbled across that Crowley's tarot deck once and sold that for a few $100. That was a good find. Apparently it's pretty rare. I forget what it's called.
I've seen people on there actually showing like, I think, original printings. Yeah, for a few $100. I wonder if one of them was you when I was looking.
Oh, it might have been. It's been a while. But
years ago when I was looking, I was like, damn, these things are expensive.
Fuck, man, they're crazy expensive. It's that stuff. Before the internet and the internet archiving all the books and stuff, man. Like I've got a paperback like bootleg copy of a book that was like hundreds of dollars up until maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and now you can just give get on the internet and press some buttons and view it in any different. So now the original printings are even down to like $100 and stuff. But yeah, there for a while, man, a lot of that knowledge was really, really hard to get your hands on. Not much of it is anymore. Every now and again, I'll come across a book like that. The book that dude loaned me, I've got a stack of books over there that he's loaned me that most of those I can't find on the Internet Archive, which is kind of cool. But you know, when I was doing eBay and they first started busted out with Chat GPT and all that shit, I started like checking magazines and I would advertise them that way to college students. It's like, this is not archived on Chat GPT. So in other words, buy this, plagiarize it. Your teacher won't be able to find out you did it. But those doors are slowly being shut now. All this shit's getting archived now.
Is there any questions anybody had for this guy? No. All right.
No.
Was there anything else that you would like to maybe? Oh, you know what? Why don't you, if you don't mind, I was going to ask you before we wrapped it up. Do you want to give people an idea about this conference, like what you're doing? I was just going
to say yes,
and what maybe you might be. I don't know if you already have an idea of what you're talking on, but maybe
I do. I'm going to be covering. My plan is there's research that I'm doing now with that book that I showed you and stuff. I'm planning on making a video and on that, and then covering it in more detail in the conference. And this one wraps up so many different goofy shit that I'm investing a lot of time into it. I'm swinging for the fences on it because I think this story is interesting enough that I'm filling in all these little holes. But it's going to be about some elongated skull stuff you've never heard before. And it gets into Rockefellers and Lewis and Clark and all kinds of goofy shit. Nice. Freemasonry, all kinds of goofy shit. The conference is the Quest for Ancient Civilizations. It's going to be in Scottsdale, Arizona, December 5th through 7th. If you can't make it, you can buy streaming passes to watch the people talk that'll be there. But there's going to be AJ from Y-Files, Jimmy Corsetti, Gary Buechler from Nerdrotic. Who else we got? Mike from Wandering Wolf, Michael Button. There's a bunch of people that are going to be there. Megalithomania. You're going to have a bunch of people there. It's definitely going to be fun. And if for those of you who didn't catch me at the Cosmic Summit, you catch me at these kinds of events. The nights in between, man, I go. So show up, be ready to party.
Yeah, no, he'll definitely be around. I have to say that the guy was always out and chilling with people. So
we were having fun. Yeah.
I had a blast while I was there.
Oh, yeah, I had a great time. It was a ton of fun. But yeah, I definitely want to promote that December 5th through 7th. There's links on my channel. If there's none here, you go check out my latest videos. There'll be links to it. And Quest for Ancient Civilizations in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah, definitely people check it out if you can.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for coming on, Dan.
Oh,
Before we wrap it up, if you don't mind, I'll have everybody plug themselves and then you can remind everybody where to find your stuff. Yeah. So real quick, Sarah, just let everybody know what's up.
Well, this was fun. This was informative as always. And I always say it's good anytime we can get together and exchange wisdom. I mean, I'm not much of a history person, but I do have an interest in Göbekli. So, and I feel like you're quite knowledgeable on that. So I've learned a lot, and I appreciate you sharing some pieces of your puzzle with everyone. So I'm Sarah. You can find me at Sahara Cosmos on X, and you can check out our podcast, Universe Unveiled, on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And Tyrone, what is going on, sir? How are you?
Appreciate it, Nick. Thank you. How's everybody? And you know what I'm saying? I know everybody, got a plethora of knowledge out here, so I know their minds are blown right now. I know mine is. I took some notes and stuff like that. I really appreciate it, Dan. Nick, for having me. Everything that you can find on me is on my website, rebirthoftheword.com. My book, Journey Through the Origins of History, is on Amazon. And thank you to everybody for letting me be here.
Oh, of course. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And Ethan Indigo, what is going on, sir?
That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all your information. And I learned a lot. Appreciate everything, and always great to talk with everyone. And I'm super easy to find and always appreciate communication. So don't hesitate to reach out. Ethan Indigo Smith. Peace, everyone.
Listen, thank you. And Mr. Marks, Bobby Marks.
Yes, thanks for having me on, Nick, and it was a great conversation. Thanks for everything, Dan. If you want to check out my stuff, you can check out my link tree, which is RMARX, and that has my artwork, my Patreon. I do a lot of research in the MetaMindcast, and you can check out all the backlogs of those episodes. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And my man, Doc Brown, what is going on?
No, man, I've enjoyed myself. I was gonna make a little catty joke and be like, I've been like Pink Floyd during this session. I've been comfortably numb. My whole left side of my face, bro. I can't even feel it. But I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, feeling worse by now, and not.
Yeah, I wouldn't have missed this for anything. Dan, followed your stuff for a while, man. I was not going to miss the opportunity to sit down and converse with you, and you didn't disappoint. I appreciate it, man. But yeah, my show is Prometheus Lens Podcast. Anywhere you can consume content, go check that out. We're always having enlightening conversations each and every week. And my book also just come out this year, The Epic of Esau, The Birthright and Seed War. We get into Bigfoot and the Bible and all kinds of high strangeness. So yeah, be sure to check that out. I appreciate it.
Listen, thank you so much for making it, my man. I appreciate it. And Bennett, my man, what's up?
Dan, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. Appreciate it. You can find me at broadcastingseeds.com. That's about it.
Thanks a lot, man. And finally, Dan, thank you again so much. I really, really appreciated you coming on. You really have like a ton of plethora of information in so many different areas. It's very impressive. And I really appreciate you even, I guess entertaining some of my weirder questions and giving me answers as best as you could. Thank you, sir. Can you please let everybody know again, like where they can find all your stuff? One more time.
Thank you, Nick. And thanks everyone. This was a great conversation. Some really great questions. Yeah, you can find me as dedunking. It's 2 D's like my ex, not debunking. It's dedunking. No, you're all good. You're not the first person to make that mistake. But if you type in DED, usually I'll come up fairly quick. I'm on X. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I used to be on TikTok. There's still an account there that every now and again somebody sends me something, but I don't ever look at it unless it's my son. But yeah, YouTube, X, or Instagram are the places to find me. Or you can also find me at Patreon, or you can find me at the Cosmic Summit or in Scottsdale, Arizona, December 5th through 7th.
Awesome. Yes, and again, we all really appreciate it. It was an amazing experience, and thank you everybody in the chat. That is what's up. Everybody was here pretty much from the beginning to end, it looks like, and there was a lot of yous in there. Again, I appreciate you stopping by, and that's why we go live. And there was a lot of awesome stuff added in there too. So people checking the replay, I suggest to check out the live chat. They always got some gems in there as well. That is the end of another Occult Rejects. Until the next one, everybody be well.